Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of our little bonus episodes. I'm here with the news from a neurodivergence perspective, the bad news and the good news, actually. And we are going to hear another diagnosis story from Hannah later on, which is really powerful. So let's get into it. Let's start with some news. We're going to start with the bad news, or maybe good news, depends how you look at it. We're going to talk about the fact check that has been done on the story that I talked about last time or the time before, that autism can be reversed, apparently. Scientists may have discovered the cause of autism is another story. 50% of children will be autistic by 2050 is another story. Prehistoric humans had ADHD too, another one. We're going to talk about the NHS autism stats that have just been published from July to June this year. And then we're going to talk about a new autism passport to help people find work, greater support that's being put in place for neurodivergent offenders, this incredible 4D reality experience for carers to better understand their autistic clients. And yeah, we're going to finish on a nice fun one with a 6-year-old who has been designing trainers for Nike and NBA basketball players. Okay, let's go. So there was the story around this piece of research that had been done on 2 twins, and they'd identified or said that over a 2-year period, all their or lots of their symptoms have been reversed or changed, and this was being hailed as being this, incredible miracle. People were calling it on social media, and actually Reuters have looked into it. I'm sure lots of other experts have kind of weighed in and had their say, but the bottom line is the case report of just 2 young girls is anecdotal, based on questionable methods, and may only show the girls were taught new behaviors that masked or reduced some symptoms. So basically there's been a lot of criticism and it's been put back in its box, which is good. And I think I'm very gullible. I believe a lot of what I read, unfortunately. And there's a lot of sensationalism. The media is not very helpful at times. And so, yeah, that's a good one on Reuters if you're interested in kind of reading more. Let's go on to the next one. Scientists may have discovered the cause of autism. Again, this was in Newsweek, in the science department. It's not a very helpful headline, actually. And basically, they have... Let me find it. So scientists may have uncovered a link between the risk of autism in children and fatty acids in umbilical cord blood. But one Yale professor told Newsweek more work needs to be done in the area. So an article you can read more about, you may have come across it. It's pretty heavy on the science. And I just wanted to find the quote. Here we go, from James McPartland, who is the professor of child psychiatry and psychology at Yale University of Medicine. He told Newsweek that the research does not provide information currently useful for diagnosing ASD, autism spectrum disorder. This is an exploratory study investigating potential mechanisms for autism clinical features that are not established and presently not well understood. Its significance lies in generating hypotheses to be tested in more rigorous future studies, but it provides limited information on which to draw conclusions or guide clinical decision-making. Anyway, I think the big piece that I took from seeing this was the potential harm or misinformation or mistruths that this could cause when it comes to, could we be spotting or diagnosing autism while fetuses are still in the womb, the potential fallout from that, just could be pretty catastrophic. So yeah, it's basically, this is saying it's really early days and they actually don't know a lot, but they found some clues And this is being done not in a cynical way. It is being done in the spirit of advancing research and developing insights that can enhance the quality of life for autistic individuals and their families. But again, you've got to read between the lines. You've got to take it with a pinch of salt. What are journalists doing? Here's another one. And this is Nancy Doyle, who is a brilliant expert in this neurodivergent space, has written an amazing article for Forbes based on a load of headlines that started being bandied around LinkedIn, social media, that 50% of children will be autistic by 2050. And Nancy's written this amazing article on why 50% of children will not be autistic by 2050. One to read. We'll obviously share all the links. So yeah, go and have a look. Everything that Nancy writes is really spot on. Next one, this is a funny one. Prehistoric humans had ADHD. This is by Discover magazine. Research shows that people with ADHD are better at foraging, an essential skill for prehistoric Homo sapiens. But the trait hasn't adapted to modern life. Yeah, a funny one to think back around when you look at, hold on, they give us some really funny bits here. The evolutionary theory posits that people with ADHD served an essential role in ancient hunter-gatherer tribes. Their impulsivity and thrill-seeking may have helped them hunt down prey, and their distractibility and adventurousness may have led them to spot more edible plants as they wandered. It's an attractive theory, one that casts ADHD as a vestigial remnant of our ancestral past rather than a simple disorder. If it's true, it could change the way we treat ADHD or even how we integrate people with ADHD into our society. Pretty interesting. I can see the memes. Charlie on our team, I'm sure, is going to be all over it. But yeah, given that 95% of our evolutionary history was spent as hunter-gatherers, who knows, could have been, the early days of ADHD being helpful as it is and contributing to daily life and society. Check it out. It's on discovermagazine.com. And then a little note on the NHS in the UK publishing their autism statistics. This is from July 2023 to June 2024. And I'll give you the headlines. So referral waiting times in June 2024, there were 187,567 patients with an open referral for suspected autism. Of these, 163,666, that's 87.3%, had a referral that had been open at least 13 weeks. So that's basically telling me that most people are waiting, vast majority of people are waiting over 3 to 4 months for their assessment. And that's even probably just the referrals. So probably even worse. So a couple of 100,000 people. We hear a lot about the ADHD stats. This dives a bit into the autism kind of wait list and the stats. Bit on first appointments in June 2024. 5% of the patients with an open referral that had been open more than 13 weeks had a first appointment within the recommended 13 weeks. I mean, that's just a first appointment. That's 5%. That's not brilliant. And open closed referrals is their next stat. There were 9,000 approximately new referrals and 8,500 closed referrals in June 2024. This is a decrease of 34.5% for new referrals. So that is either telling me less people are going for autism assessments, or don't know actually. That's either telling me that less people are going for new referrals. Let's just scrap that bit. Scrap the open closed referrals bit. So yeah, that gives us a little bit of a sense of what's going on NHS autism wise, and still not wild and not great to hear that there are 178,000 people with open referrals in June this year. Next story is from the BBC. So this is a story about a new autism passport to help people finding work. So this is a passport in inverted commas that looks like a booklet designed to help young autistic people transitioning from education to work. Dawn, the Disability Advice and Welfare Network, hope the booklet will help more neurodivergent education leavers find employment. It was created in association with the Suffolk Law Centre, and they've estimated, it's a legal charity based in Ipswich, they've estimated that 70% of autistic adults are not working, which is a very alarming, dreadful statistic when I think about and know and see and hear how much autistic people can contribute to society, to the workplace. It's a 35-page autism education leavers passport. I'd love to, they're not a million miles away from where I am here near Colchester. And so, yeah, I'd love to, I don't know if there's been any translation of this into media formats, social content, digital education, but I'd love to hear from either PIC Training who are involved or the Suffolk Law Centre. To see how we could translate this to being, I guess, in digital form if it's not, and spread that more widely to an audience who are probably fairly digitally savvy. That would be great. Next one, so this is an older story. This is from the middle of May, but is a reminder. There's quite a bit that I see bouncing around in the news around the amount or the kind of the amount of neurodivergent offenders within the public prison system. And so I wanted to share these pieces of information, I guess, that maybe weren't widely spread in the middle of May when they came out because people were too busy worrying about elections. But just to give you the facts. So this is a gov.uk article, but staff dedicated to helping neurodivergent offenders are now in place in all public prisons. Prisoners with conditions such as autism are to get better rehabilitation. Who knows what that means? And this is part of the government's work to reduce reoffending and cut crime. Then we get a bit further into the stats. The prison service has now conducted more than 180,000 screenings since April 2021. It's also opened 4 specialised units to improve support. This includes HMP Pentonville, where a recent inspection report noted there were fewer incidents of violence and a reduction in assaults on the unit. I hope that's neurodivergent focus and not just in total disconnected from neurodivergent people. Further support for neurodivergence being introduced across the criminal justice system. Yeah, let's see. I mean, this is all, I think that the stats are pretty alarming when it comes to the amount of neurodivergent people misdiagnosed, undiagnosed, unsupported within the prison system. I've seen stats up to kind of 80% of people in the prison system not getting the help that they need and therefore reoffending, etc. So, yeah, anything being done in this area, I think is brilliant and needed. And I'm certainly keen to know more about what's going on to help people from an intervention perspective or a support and rehabilitation perspective. Okay, on to some, so that sounds like sort of fairly good news. On some, yeah, nice news. This 4D technology that's giving carers first-hand experience of autism and dementia. And this was rolled out. This is actually a kind of a truck. Imagine a truck that has, a booth in the back where you can go and have this sort of virtual reality experience to understand the sensory processing difficulties faced by autistic people, for example. It's a really cool this was news.stv.tv reporting the story. There's a reality experience bus. There's a picture on it there. It's brilliant. They first rolled this out for a virtual dementia tour across the UK, which apparently had really great results. Just well done to Training to Care, which is based in Essex. And SSCN Healthcare. Well done. It sounds, it's a nice modern format using media in a creative and interactive way to aid people's understanding of what it might be like in specific aspects or the specific challenges for autistic people. So brilliant. And while we're on that, actually, I must just make a note to say, if you are neurodivergent and listening, and if you haven't come across 8D audio, check it out. It is pretty incredible, from like a 360-degree sensory experience of listening to music, podcasts, meditating, etc. It's a really amazing experience. I find it very relaxing. So do check out 8D audio. 4D not enough, let's go 8D. Last story is this beautiful article on Forbes.com. The headline is 6-year-old neurodivergent creator designs 2 WNBA champions Nike shoes, and is effectively Justice Swan, who is a non-speaking autistic child who's 6, has designed these new Nike trainers for Jewel Lloyd, who's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, 2-time WNBA champion for the Seattle Storm. And it's just a lovely story. Let me see here. Jewel has a very special relationship with my kids, especially with Justice. Swan shares. He's non-verbal and autistic, and he loves to draw. He's obsessed with smiley faces, lightning bolts and flames, and he drew Jewel's shoe. I mean, every last detail, colors, designs, everything. So a nice story, a nice outlet for people, expressing themselves and their creativity. Lastly, we're going to hear from Hannah. We're not going to hear from Hannah. We're going to hear me using Hannah's words. So we've been asking people, or people have been sending in their sort of pre and post diagnosis stories. The feedback we get is really great. They help, they mean something. So today is Hannah's, and I'm going to read her story. My name is Hannah. Between 2020 and 2024, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, autism, ARFID, and CPTSD. My path to this point in my life has been a difficult one, but one that drives my want to use creativity to empower social change. I grew up undiagnosed neurodivergent. I am autistic with a PDA profile and ADHD. This meant the mainstream system didn't work for me. However, being female, no one picked up the struggles I worked so perfectly to hide. I also suffered abuse in my childhood and had a number of other traumatic events. I lived with my grandparents and watched the deterioration and ultimate death of my granddad, my best friend, to vascular dementia. My brain did not learn or work in the same way as my peers. I couldn't really make friends, but those I did never lasted very long. By the time I was 15, I had no friends. I developed an eating disorder at 9 and also started having suicidal thoughts. I've been anxious my whole life, and just after my GCSE exams, it all crumbled around me. My mental health deteriorated. The years of masking and trauma had led to burnout and a full breakdown. I then spent the next 4 to 5 years in and out of general, but mainly psychiatric hospitals. I ended up in PICU on constant obs due to the level of distress I was in. I was a revolving door patient, labelled difficult and too complex. I was told there was no hope and I would never change. Unfortunately, during my time in hospitals, I suffered significant abuse which led to even more complex trauma and deep issues with trust. During my hospital stays, I was subjected to neglect, abuse, and mistreatment. This, combined with my childhood trauma, has resulted in CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I was made to feel so broken, like a problem and a burden. I was repeatedly told I would never succeed. I had such a narrow idea of what success was from society and our school system. I believed success was this linear model. I forced myself to start 4 A-levels in biology, chemistry, maths, and psychology with the idea of doing medicine. To clarify, there is nothing wrong with this. For some, this is their success, but success will look different for everyone. Something I never even finished the first year of. As the years went on, as I watched my peers continue to squeeze through the sausage factory, which is our education system, learning to embrace the new freedoms of adult life, I locked behind the doors of a psychiatric hospital and locked within the demons in my mind, believing there was no way out or hope of a future. I truly believed I was better off dead. I was in a perpetual state of despair and incredibly frightened and scared. In the end, I had no choice. The way I was going was only going to end up one way. I was scared, but I quite literally had nothing to lose. For so long, I felt unsure of my purpose, of what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know who I was. I'd spent so long hiding and masking, I truly had no idea about the real me. This journey of self-discovery took many years. It started in 2020 and it still continues to this day. In truth, the largest part of this work occurred to me only last month. I discovered that I had 2 massive passions in life, 2 things which drive everything I do. One being a love of performing and expressing myself creatively. This is something that massively helped in my journey to discovering who I am. And the other, which is the drive that gets me up each day, social change. I was diagnosed my first neurodivergent diagnosis in 2020 at 19, when I was told I was autistic. Before this, I had a multitude of labels thrown at me, including the classic borderline personality disorder. I've been under so many different services and had every treatment therapy known to man, yet nothing made any difference, and in many ways actually left me more traumatized. Now I know why. It's because I am autistic, PDA, ADHD. Due to my experiences, especially in relation to people abusing their positions, I have massive trust issues. My diagnosis saved my life in more ways than one. It wasn't until 2020, at 19 years old, that I was told I was autistic. The world of neurodivergence was opened, and an explanation that I wasn't a strange, broken horse, but a normal zebra. A section from one of my favorite quotes about labels. Of course, this wasn't an overnight transformation. But slowly over the next few years, I educated myself. I learned about autism, neurodivergence, and I went on a journey of self-discovery. I did this through different forms of creativity. I began to use this as a way to express myself, a way to get lost away from the noises of my own head. I used it to understand and investigate what neurodivergence meant to me. It allowed me to work through my own internalized ableism, my fear of being different, and to cope with the constant discrimination and poor treatment of others. As much as that is such a cringy and cliche thing to say, the power of creativity is one we often underestimate. Creativity is so much more than just art and drawing. It just takes many forms, including dance, music, and spoken word. It gives us the autonomy to investigate alternative methods of problem solving, communicating, and expression. For me, it's the way my brain is wired, a way of expressing the thoughts I cannot utter and my form of escapism to a place that just makes sense. Within creativity, there are no rules or set answers, but the freedom to be whoever I want to be. I've combined my two passions of creativity and social change and have now worked with around 20 different charities in a variety of youth voice roles. I've done presentations, public speaking, social media, pitches, training, videos, been on youth boards, a young ambassador, written letters, rallied for change, just to name a few. I've also set up my own blog, socials, and podcast to share my story, raise awareness and acceptance, and hopefully help others find their identity and confidence to be their authentic selves. I've worked as a wellbeing mentor for autistic adults and have just finished a level 3 expert by experience course, which means I will hopefully be able to do more peer support work. Mentoring is something I believe is so powerful for neurodivergent people in particular, and truly can be life-changing. In terms of my creativity, I've just finished a foundation in musical theatre at drama school and have a place on a degree in September, something I and others never deemed possible. I've started ADHD meds, which have been life-changing, as well as investigating the PDA profile, which has really helped. Knowing who I am and how my brain works has allowed me to work with it rather than against. Things have changed so much. It's bonkers to think of how different my life is even to just 1 year ago. I now actually have friends who I make plans with. It's bonkers to even contemplate this, and I'm so grateful for finding people who embrace me and want to be my friend. It's quite a crazy concept to me. Things are still up and down, and it's still overwhelming, but I'm taking pride in the fact that now I know and can identify it. I know things are tricky, and my nervous system is very dysregulated, but I also know that it will pass and I will be okay. So I guess that is massive progress. I've also come so far with my rejection-sensitive dysphoria, which I never believed I'd overcome. In a bizarre way, this industry has helped with this, which is odd, but I'll take it. You would think the constant no's judgment would have sent me over the edge, but actually it's helped me take no's rejection not quite so personally. Don't get me wrong, rejection is still very painful, but I handle it so much better, and there are even the odd time where it doesn't bother me at all. Which is crazy for someone who tried to kill herself every time she perceived rejection. I'm the ADHDer who starts many projects, but I'm loving the fact I am to try things and have the energy and motivation to be part of the world. My sibling, who was assigned male at birth, was diagnosed as autistic and ADHD as a youngish child, but being female, I wasn't identified. I spent just under 5 years in and out of hospital and was labelled a problem, attention-seeking and borderline personality disorder. It was my first ever inpatient admission where another patient said, "You're autistic." That was when I asked to do the screening questionnaire and then get a place on the waiting list. This was in September 2018 and my assessment was March 2020. I was diagnosed the day before lockdown and that was it. You're autistic and now you are locked in your house. I still struggled and nothing changed for a while. I met other autistic young people, but still didn't quite feel like I fit in. This was hard, as I was like, I must be really broken. I had no support, advice, or education about autism, so just a diagnosis, but nothing else changed. It was then established in 2021 that I almost certainly had ADHD, and I was placed on a minimum 5-year waiting list, as my country doesn't do adult ADHD assessments. So my county doesn't do adult ADHD assessments. So I had to go across the border. In 2022, I applied through Right to Choose and then got an assessment in July 23 and meds October 23. In between this one time when I was in crisis, I was referred to an autism mental health crisis team. I got 10 sessions with an autism specialist psychologist to learn about autism and even more importantly, learn what autism meant to me. This was when it was discovered that PDA was a better lens to look at my autism through. These sessions, which didn't feel like it at the time, were very much a turning point. Now I no longer just had a label, I know I had an identity. The next 2 years I put all the work in myself, helped massively by my ADHD meds in October. I started my meds and it was within a few months as if I could see inside my own brain. I discovered so much about myself. I was able to be really honest and also reflective. I've used creativity to understand my diagnosis and find what it means to me. And I'm now passionate about helping others discover what their diagnosis means to them. Diagnosis is much more than a label, and it's not an excuse or a cure, but an explanation. It answers the questions of why, but with that, more work has to be done to then actually make progress. I believe the diagnosis process in this country really lacks the identity and aftercare of the label. It's so much more than just label. It's how we identify to that label and how that explanation allows us to navigate new ways to cope. Wow. Thanks, Hannah. What a journey. And I guess just highlights to me how important early intervention and understanding and the education that we're all trying to push for can mean that there isn't misdiagnosis, that women, young, old, children this is spotted and people can get help. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys. See you next week.